It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Forrest, your shirts are just consistently well done. I'm liking it.
Oh, thank you.
The one thing question everything shirt today. You've got the Round Earther shirt.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, but this is not Talk T-shirts, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talk Heathen. Welcome. My name is Kenneth Leonard. Joining me today is Forrest Valkai. I'm so psyched you're here.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Talk Heathen is a live
out
call
with a beautiful
show.
compliment. Thank you.
Well, I mean, get used to it. There's going to be more. Talk Heathen is a live call-in show. We have open lines, so get your calls in. You can call us at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. So with no more ado, we're going to dive into our first call. We've got Nicholas calling from the Show Me State of Missouri. Wants to talk about faith. Nicholas, what's going on? How can we help?
Hey, Nicholas.
Hello. How are you doing? My
Good.
name.
I'm awesome, man. How are you?
Nicholas. I'm doing excellent. Just getting out of church, actually. I'm Catholic, and I just wanted to talk about the utility of faith and my testimony in that regard.
Okay.
So there's the question that I received when I was watching a Jordan Peterson video the other day was talking about proof of God. I can't prove God. But you have to believe or disbelieve, and then there's an internal logic that comes from that. But there are obvious benefits that come from belief in, for instance, the placebo effect. I'm sure you guys are familiar with. If one believes one is bound to get better, then the odds of them getting better it's statistically provable that one is more likely to get better. So your attitude does indeed affect your real reality. And my belief in Jesus Christ has freed me from fear of death. So I live in run, rabbit, run, the kind of Pink Floyd kind of element. I'm free of that. I live, I kind of circle back to a nothing matters, but everything matters. You reach that existential point where you either have to decide. Well, I'm getting off topic. The point is I have received significant benefits in my life by believing, and I want to share those with people, and it makes me happy, and
So here's
sorry, go ahead.
So here's where my pushback would be, and thank you for calling in, and I want to push back respectfully here, because I would not argue ever that belief is a powerful thing, that belief is certainly a useful thing. So my question though to people is it tends to almost always circle back to, how much do you care about whether or not your beliefs are true?
Pretty significant. The truth of the matter is a pretty big deal. A pretty big deal.
So
I wouldn't want to believe in something that's a lie.
If people can believe different things about different mutually exclusive gods, different afterlives, I mean, people can believe all kinds of different things religiously and feel like those things have created a positive effect in their lives. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens though? Say somebody believes that the best thing that they could do with their time would be to make sure that like women couldn't get access to healthcare, or that children should not be taught science in schools, or that going into a crowded marketplace and blowing themselves up is going to make God super duper happy and give their life lots of meaning and purpose. I mean, does it matter? And here the argument that I'm about to make with you is that there's sort of a cumulative effect to believing things for utilitarian reasons, not because they're true, that can get our species in trouble. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're getting at, where, a wholehearted belief in something that is false. The truth or falsehood of the belief is manifest by the fruits of what ends up happening. If I end up saying something that's true that ends up pissing off people, that in the right way, that makes them challenge their ideas, that makes them think about what's happening, and is in a loving manner, then I am doing something that's good. I think that truth is objective. Like, there is truth and there is not truth. I think that science is a method by which one can discover God's plan, but if one isn't looking for God's plan in the first place, you wouldn't know what to find. If you don't have a serious idea of God in your head, then you aren't really struggling with the idea. If you can't suspend your disbelief long enough to have an idea of God, then you don't actualize it. You understand? There's not
That last part, you lost me.
You're dismissing it.
Yeah, you've said three distinct things that I have issue with. And like the first thing, you said that this belief is useful to you, that it's freed you from your fear of death. And therefore it has some, because it's useful, it must be true or good in some way. And I don't buy into that. I think that's what Kenneth was just getting at, is that you can believe not true things that are useful, but then also not true, or you can believe horrible things and still have effects from them. That was the second thing that you said just a minute ago. You said that the results of your belief speak to how true it is. That no, I very much disagree. Yes, you can believe something that isn't true and still act on those not true beliefs and still have results from it, and it's still not a true thing. And now, like, I think the key here is at the very beginning you referenced the placebo effect, and I think you hit the nail on the head right there. A placebo is something that isn't real. It's a sugar pill. It doesn't have what you think it has, right? A placebo is a lie.
No.
Yes.
Not real and not provable are two different things. I can't prove that the sun is going to come up tomorrow. No, I know that's a false argument. But how about I can't prove
I get where you're
whether or
coming
not
from.
I'm going to get better, but my faith that it will has given me something to hold on to, right? And
So what I would throw at you is, and this, what I would want to challenge you with, and this is not, I'm not just being a jerk here. This is the truth. I am very staunchly anti-theist, and my philosophy is different than a lot of other people. The schools of philosophy that I enjoy are different, and those things have also rid me of a fear of death. I do not fear death, and atheism is actually a part of that. So that was the first example you brought up. Does that make my belief that there isn't a God as justified as your belief that there is one, because utility is all we're talking about?
Well, I just want to. I think I missed your point. I think
my point is that if you're coming in to say that your belief in God is useful and that the functionality of it speaks to its truth, I'm telling you that I have other beliefs than you have, and that they are also functional and useful, and they make my life better. Does that mean that our conflicting beliefs are both true at the same time? Or does that mean that an idea can be useful?
on an equal epistemic footing.
There's an archetype of the highest good, right? There are levels to good. There's a good, better, and best, right? If you
So do you think that your belief
archetype,
is more good
then
than
you-
mine?
I believe that God is good, and I believe that I must shed my iniquity to be cast more like Him. I have to lose.
Okay, so
myself
now here's the last thing I would bring up. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm sorry, Kenneth. I know I'm talking all over you.
No, go ahead.
That's the last thing that I would bring up here is that what you just said, that God is good. I strongly disagree with you. I've read the literature, as it were, on your faith, and the God character presented by Christian religions, to me, in my opinion, is not good at all. It's horrible.
That's the thing.
And
That's
so,
the thing, that you, like,
well, and so I don't want to just debate that with you. What I'm saying is that I think that what you're bringing here is this belief gives me a little bit of utility, but there's also all of this baggage that I would say is there. So why not cut the baggage and just have this one utility? Why not do the thing, like if you're talking about avoiding your fear of death, without having to tack on a whole religion to it? Why is that necessary?
Because it's true. It's true. The facts are that God's morality is the basis of existence.
So Nicholas, I need you to pause right there, because before you can say, hang on, because before you can start saying that there are certain properties of a God and that those properties are true, you would have to have some evidence that that God exists in the first place. Do you have that?
I mean, it's only anecdotal. I've lived a very crazy life. I've seen people healed in the name of Jesus, and I've seen stuff that seems literally impossible. And so I don't really have the convenience of disbelief at this point.
Okay.
I was atheist at 14. Yeah. I began practicing different religions in order to, like, in a scientific manner, try and disprove spirit and God. I very quickly found out I was wrong. I ended up in a very dark place. I experienced lots of dark forces and the casting out of demons and all of this other stuff.
So you're making so many claims. So here's the thing. I'm gonna start with one question and see if we can't make some sense together. So I'm gonna ask you, when is it time to believe a claim, any claim of any kind? When is it time to believe something?
When there is no possibility of one's knowledge, positive or negative, you have to have faith one way or the other.
So that's wrong, what you just said.
What?
So here, and it sounds like you might be falling into something like a Doyle's fallacy type of situation. So I don't know if you've ever heard or if you've read like the Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes stories, but there's this, so there's this idea. Our friend Matt over on the Atheist Experience coined this, that there's this idea that in those stories, that once Sherlock Holmes had ruled out all of the possibilities of things that couldn't be the case with respect to a mystery, that whatever remains must be true. Have you heard this?
Occam's razor kind of a thing?
No, not Occam's razor. Occam's razor is not multiplying entities unnecessarily. This is entirely different. So the idea being that once you've eliminated all things that couldn't be the case, that what's left must be true. And that is how the mysteries are solved in the Sherlock Holmes stories. But the thing is, the reason why it's a problem is that you can never know that you've ruled everything out. You can never rule out possible candidate explanations that you just aren't aware of. It's nonsense. So what you seem to be doing here is overcomplicating the issue. I'm going to say here, I'm of the opinion that the time to believe a claim is...
I would like to push back very quickly. There is a God or there is not a God. If there is a God, then I should be afraid of him because he has complete domain over me. I am at his mercy.
Wait, how do you know that?
To know a little bit.
You're
Well, no. It's a
you
thought,
just did
it's
two things all at once.
Yeah,
You just said if this thing
asking
exists, then it
me
must
to
be
a
this
God.
one.
Please, you guys are talking
Exactly
over me.
that.
Please, guys. If there is a God, if he's real, so just give me the presumption and the thought experiment. If God is real, then he has complete control over me. I am at his will, at his mercy. There is nothing I can do against God. I cannot win a war against it. There's nothing I can do. I am at his mercy. That is scary. And so if you have that presumption, then the next logical thing would be to get to try and know what this thing wants. Why is it
Sure.
there? You know, what
Okay,
connection do
why
I
on
have
earth
to
would
it,
we
right?
why on earth would we have that presumption? Okay, so I asked you the question about when is it time to believe something because I was trying to get something on the table. So I'll just put it on the table. I think that the time to believe a claim is when there is sufficient evidence to justify belief in that claim. That's simple as that.
That's cowardice.
Cowardice?
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Hold on a second. Oh my God.
If you don't, no. Let me tell you. If you don't think that you can be anything you want to be, the American dream, if you don't think that you can be better tomorrow, there's no evidence that you will be better tomorrow. You just believe it, and your belief.
That's bullshit. What you just said.
You're
That's
conflating
bullshit.
so many things together.
What you just said is bullshit, and it's demonstrable bullshit. So I can look at my life and see that incremental progress is a thing that exists in reality. So the idea that I could potentially be better tomorrow at something than I am today is consistent with reality. There's no faith required. I don't have to believe anything on bad evidence. I can just look at how reality functions.
But in the inverse, if your life has been getting worse every single day, then you would logically conclude my life is going to get worse and will only get worse.
No, I wouldn't, because that would be a ridiculous fallacy. If my life had been getting worse, but I can look at reality and see that incremental positive change is possible, and I can see that there are people whose lives have been bad and then gotten better. Like I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds like you're I don't know what the case is that you're trying to make, and we are no closer to you demonstrating that it's reasonable to believe in this God of yours.
You keep conflating faith with expectations. I can have expectations on something because I can track a trajectory of what it's doing. That isn't the same as having blind faith in something. Like if I see a pattern, I can predict what's going to happen next in that pattern. That's different than just having a wild belief. And what Kenneth brought up a little while ago when he was talking about Arthur Conan Doyle, he was talking about deductive reasoning. There's a reason why in science we don't use deductive reasoning because, as Kenneth said, you can never possibly know that you ruled everything out. We use inductive reasoning. Rather than saying, here's what I'm trying to figure out, let's look for evidence for it, we say, here's the evidence, what does this point to? And what you're doing is deductive. You're saying, I think there's a God, so let's find the reasons to believe in it. If there is a God, then it must be all of these things, which are totally different claims. You would have to back up with totally different amounts of evidence. And then you're saying, well, if I think that my life's going to improve, or if I think the sun's going to rise tomorrow, if I think anything's going to happen, that's faith. And if I only believe evidence, that cowardice, because I don't have the strength, the will, the courage to believe in something by pure fantasy. You're mixing up so many different things to create a totally new set of rules that I guarantee you don't use for anything else in your life.
I do.
You in the rest of your life would use this set of rules that you use for your God?
You guys have had the table. You guys have had the table for quite a bit. Let me just get a little bit more out. And I just want to say, I have seen that atheists often are afraid of the unknown, and
this has nothing to do with whether a God exists.
I am a scientist. I am excited about the unknown. That's why I started studying science.
Got to poke.
Nicholas, why do you believe that this God exists?
Get a thought out. Why do I believe this God exists?
Yeah, let's deal with that.
My personal living has been, well, my testimony, when I was 6 years old, I gambled away my life to Satan. And I ran into many different children who were demonically inspired. And there was some really dark shit that I saw. And, birds of a feather flock together kind of a thing. I ran into all of these different kinds
No,
of people.
So many
you're
first of
talking
alls.
about. Nicholas, you got to understand. Nicholas, everything you're saying right now sounds to me like just gibberish because you're talking about demons and you're talking about all this other crap that I don't have any reason to think that demons exist.
You can't suspend your disbelief to take me at face value.
Okay,
No,
Nicholas, really
Nicholas,
quick, just
no, I'm not, because I care about whether or not the things that I believe are true. So if you can show me, if you can explain to me why I should think that anything that you're saying makes any sense, then I'll be with you. It's really that simple. Like I said, I'll believe things when I have reasons.
I'm saying that there's beyond sense. There's beyond your understanding. I don't understand
Nicholas,
everything.
I have a closet right here in my office. In this closet in my office right here, just in front of me that I can see with my eyes, the door's closed, but behind that door, there is a goblin named Roland, and he eats Subway sandwiches and he grants wishes. And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's no, and sometimes it's not right now. If you open the door, he evaporates into another dimension, so you can't ever see him. But Roland the Closet Goblin is in there right now, waiting to grant your wishes. You have no evidence for this, but it's changed my life to believe this. I pray to Roland every day. Does this make it true? Are you willing to believe it? Is it cowardice for you to ask for evidence for my claims?
Yeah, suspend your disbelief, man.
Just believe it. It matters.
How deeply? Well, no. Well, you asked me the question. How deeply do you believe in Goblin? If I put you
1,000,000%.
in a situation, no, guys. If I put you in a situation where it's your life or it's Goblin, will you die for Goblin?
I would die for Roland the Closet Goblin in a heartbeat. Roland is my savior. He's my life. Does that make it true?
Like, for people listening, this is the deal. Like, the degree to which you or anybody else is convinced of something has nothing to do with whether your belief is true.
That's what I'm saying. I would die for Roland. Does that make it true?
True. That is true. Yeah, the degree to which one believes or does not believe does not necessarily make that true. That is correct.
Right. So really quick, just what is your best evidence for this God that you believe in?
If you think evidence is important,
we don't need the entire Lifetime original movie about your 6-year-old demon experiences. Just give us evidence.
My best evidence. My best evidence is that I lost all of my possessions in Oregon. I was homeless for all of 45 seconds. I prayed. A man walked up to me and handed me a sleeping bag. I walked down the street. I ran into a man in the park who was having a homeless rights demonstration in the middle of Ashland, Oregon. Nowhere to me. The entire town came out and fed me. I ran into a stranger, again, that same day, who housed me, clothed me, and we both had a mutual understanding of the goodness of God and the word of Jesus Christ. And we shared that.
So you have evidence that people are nice.
And that's the thing, is that I don't require any more evidence than that. That's enough for me.
So if all those people did those nice things and talked to you about Roland the Closet Goblin, you'd be here believing in Roland the Closet Goblin then.
If the followers of Roland the Closet Goblin were the ones who answered all of my misgivings, then I would have a course to consider him. Yeah.
All right, Nicholas.
That's insane.
Nicholas, I'm not entirely convinced that you're being genuine, but I'm gonna be charitable and let's tug on this string a little bit. So, evidence is anything that can be used to demonstrate that a claim is true. Okay. And when I say true, I'm talking about something being consistent with reality. All right. Just so that we've got a couple terms on the table. So if somebody comes up to you when you are in a vulnerable moment and gives you a sleeping bag, what is that evidence of?
That is evidence to me that God is looking out for me, and he sent that man to hand me a sleeping bag.
Okay, so how do you get from guy gives you sleeping bag to guy gives you sleeping bag because of a God?
God gives me sleeping bag because in book it say, if I hungry, I eat. If I naked, I get clothes. That's as simple as it
so
is.
But it doesn't say
question.
that. Your book does not say that. First of all, if you're referring to the Bible, okay, no, it does not.
Yeah, it does. God cares for the flowers and the birds, and he makes sure that they are fed and clothed and all this other stuff. No, what is it? Do not worry.
I'll tell you from memory, do not be anxious about anything,
Do not
but
worry
through
about
prayer
what
and
to eat or what
supplication
to wear.
with thanksgiving,
That's the pagan.
present your requests to God.
God
And the peace of
clothes
God,
you.
which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I've read the fucking book, guy. All right? You're not going to be able to bullshit me about what the book says. All right? So here's the deal. Guy gives you sleeping bag. Is it possible for a guy to give somebody a sleeping bag and for it to be just because a guy was trying to help out somebody who they saw who they thought was in need? Is that possible?
Is that it? Is that it? I'm sorry, I'm going to beep on the phone end. They're not mutually exclusive. They can both be true. He could be, and I mean, I've been
That is
treated very well
correct.
by Satanists, by atheists.
Sure.
God
So-
can still send them. Yeah.
If it is possible for somebody to give you a sleeping bag and for it to not have anything to do with the God watching out for you, then how can it be evidence that the God is watching out for you?
I'm unconcerned with that. It just is.
Well, and
So then
thank
you
you
don't
for
care.
admitting this, because this is the deal. And this is why at the very beginning of the call, I asked you if you care about whether or not the things you believe are true. You acted like you did, but it is very, very clear at this point that you don't. In some areas of your life, I'm sure you do. I'm sure, you look both ways before you cross the street. But with respect to your God belief, you very clearly do not care about whether your beliefs are true.
I really wish you knew me, man.
Well, here's what I know. I know
What
that
would
you're
that
willing
do?
to make claims about reality and not care about whether or not those claims are consistent with reality.
Like you're talking about somebody gave you a sleeping bag, therefore God must be real. What about all the people who don't get that and die on the street? Like a child dies of starvation every 10 seconds. Is that all proof that God isn't real because nobody gave them food? Like,
Dude, go to Los Angeles and look at all the folks on Skid Row who would love a sleeping bag and who are praying their asses off, hoping someone will help them, and it's not happening.
And I guarantee there's double-digit churches within walking distance of where they're dying. So, like, you have a million counter evidences for what you're talking about, and that's why we don't use anecdotal evidence, because it's ridiculous. It's nonsense. You already admitted that if these people believed in a goblin in the closet, you would consider it. You've said several times that evidence doesn't matter because faith is what's important. Lots of people have faith in lots of things. It doesn't make them true. If I believe something that you believe is wrong, we both have faith, we both have a reason for believing it. How are we going to determine which one of us is right? How are we going to, if I say every single thing that you said today, I was homeless, I was starving, I was destitute, and a guy came up to me and said, hey man, roll in the closet goblin spoke to me today and told me to give you this, and do I now believe it? If I say that I was possessed by the attic gnomes that are the enemies of the closet goblin as I was 6 years old, I met a bunch of people who are possessed by the attic gnomes, does that make it real? If I tell you that I had the courage and the strength because I read a book about the goblins once, does that make it real? Or can we say we need to test this and see if there's any actual evidence for it, any actual tangible reason that we can all believe in that matters? Or do you just believe it because you want to believe it because you want to believe it because you want to believe it?
Well, there's a 2,000-year-old book that has been passed down from generation to generation.
The Bhagavad Gita is older.
Is based off of.
So
the Bhagavad Gita is older than the
culture's
Bible.
not based on that book.
Just
what does the age of a book have to do with whether the contents of the book are true?
Well, God defends His word, and that word exists throughout time. Truth.
The Bhagavad Gita is one of the Vedas of Hinduism. It is older than the Bible. Does that make it more true?
I'm really trying to just make it super easy for you. Because the question is so obvious. What does the age of a book have to do with whether or not the contents of the book are true?
Our society has based the entirety of our ethics upon this book.
So do you think that response answers the question?
Fully understand.
Do you think that the response that you just gave,
the mystery?
do you think that the response that you're giving here is in any way an answer to the question that I asked.
Why do you?
Because like I would like to have honest conversations with people. I still think that it's possible to have an honest conversation with you. But if I'm going to ask you a question like a really simple question, like what does the age of a book have to do with whether its contents are true? Like you've got to be able to just be honest with your answers. Let's use the tools of reason to try to figure out what's real.
Let me repeat the question and I'll answer. Okay. What does the age of a book have to do with whether or not it is true? It does not directly have anything to do with whether or not it is true.
Does it indirectly?
I would expect that if God had spoken to man, that he would have given evidence to people to be able to hear his word. So I would expect that book to exist and to be old. So
why?
So what about the older religions with older books?
I think that there's elements of truth to them, right? It's like seeing a tree, but like seeing the leaves, like an elephant, but seeing the tail or the trunk or whatever. I think that Christ.
What about newer religions with newer books?
They are trying to obfuscate the truth of Christianity. For instance, Islam, the whole point of Islam is to say Jesus ascended into heaven and did not die on the cross and did not raise on the third day, because if the older religions,
if the older religions are just a glimpse at the truth and the newer religions are obfuscating the truth, how do you know that it exactly 2,000 years ago we had the focus just in where we got exactly and only the whole truth just this one time, and everything before it and everything after it sucks?
Well, that sucks. It holds different elements. But
doesn't matter. How do you know that this is the right one?
Yeah, that's the question. Why should anybody think that the book that you've picked is the right one?
Well, truth is true, right? I know that's a silly thing to say. Truth is true. So, truth would be the root of any religion. If you can discern whether or not a thing is true by both its utility and
nope.
Can't.
We already covered that. You can't discern that it's true because of its utility.
Yeah. Beliefs being useful has nothing to do with whether beliefs are true.
I do know it's true. I know it's true. Because I know that I know that everybody is not perfect. There is no perfect person. I know that there is.
That's why Roland heals them.
Yeah. So I know that nobody's perfect, and I got to work it again and again until I get it right. But
there's lots of books that say that. There's lots of books that say that nobody's perfect. So we're no closer to a reason to think that your book of choice is, frankly, a magic book that comes from a God.
Jesus is the only one that allows us to be perfect. He gives us a cheat sheet. He gives us redemption. None of
these are just claims, though. These are claims in the book. These are just claims that are in the book.
Other religions have made the same claims.
So I'll give you one more try to present something like an argument or evidence, because all you're doing is just laying claims on the table. So do you have anything that can be used to substantiate any of these claims?
The evidence that was overwhelming to me is the apostles dying for their beliefs.
Which ones?
They, Bartholomew, Thomas.
How do you know those guys died for their beliefs?
There's significant evidence in Roman and other texts.
Like what?
Actually does a pretty good. Infographs does a pretty good little bit on it. If you guys want to ever look up the evidence of Jesus Christ and the evidence of the martyrs. There's
Okay, so
more
what about the
documentation.
what about
no,
this?
There's more documentation on
I want to let him do this.
Christ and
So
his life
so
than there
so
is on the gall
you've
of
you've got a claim now about martyrs. Okay, so even if I grant to you, first of all, okay, I'll just do this. I'll grant to you that there are people throughout history who have died because they believed Christianity. That as a direct consequence of their belief, they laid down their lives. Does that have anything to do with whether their beliefs are true?
in the day with Jesus and they all laid down their lives for it is pretty remarkable. If they
All I'm saying.
So what about
hold on.
the
You're getting out ahead of
suicide
me.
bombers now?
I was going to go right there.
Does
Yeah.
that make Islam clue? Like,
yeah, because you can find examples of people who are willing to die for their beliefs, but does that have anything to do with whether or not their beliefs are true?
Yeah. But these guys are the root of it. These guys were
Answer the
ones
question.
that followed
Answer
him
the question.
directly.
Answer the question. Does people being willing to die for their beliefs have anything to do with whether their beliefs are true?
It has to do with whether they really truly believe that.
That's a yes or a no.
Yeah. So
they would not. No, it doesn't. But it is remarkable.
No, it doesn't.
that
Period.
Somebody would die for their beliefs when they are talking about a person that they physically saw.
how do you know what they physically saw?
You can't. I mean, they lived in his time. Like, yeah, I give these things for somewhat granted, but they.
What about what's his name? Satya Sai Baba, isn't his name? Where like millions of people come to his birthday party every year. They say that he's performed miracles. He's a dude living in India right now. They say that he's raised the dead and walked on water and done all these amazing things. I bet you some of those people would lay down their lives for him. Is he actually the Messiah? He's alive today and he's in India and people claim that he does all these amazing things and would surely die for him today. Does that make his claims true?
I mean, he's not the Messiah.
How do you know?
Yeah. So,
People would die for
Nicholas,
him. People believe in it. It gives them
and
great
this is
utility. That gives them meaning to their life.
Because this call isn't going anywhere, I'm gonna drop it. Nicholas, like we just went in circles with you for half an hour, guy. And if you go back and watch this call, I mean, for us to get anywhere with these calls, people have to be willing to engage honestly. So, Nicholas, I would urge you to go back and look at how many times we asked you questions and you just went somewhere else because the question was difficult for you or it made you uncomfortable or was pointing towards there being a flaw in your reasoning here. Forrest and I both are people who will follow the evidence to conclusions. If you could show us evidence that any of the stuff that you believe is true, we would have to come with you. We wouldn't really have a choice. Over it. That's it. And that's all it would take. But a guy gave me a sleeping bag is not good evidence because there are people from multiple religions who are out doing outreach as we speak, giving sleeping bags to people.
Man, the largest soup kitchen in the planet run by the Sikhs.
And they believe different shit than you. And those beliefs give their lives purpose and meaning and they feel really good and all the stuff that you have. But warm, fuzzy feelings and for the Bible tells me so are not good reasons to believe stuff. With that, we're going to roll a reel of all the things that you may have missed on other ACA shows in the past week.
Sounds good.
Not because you're married or that you're in a long-term relationship that now suddenly all the effort goes out the door. Don't take your partner for granted. Put the effort in. Start seeing them. Start putting them in focus again.
I don't know the methodologies of which you speak of that we determine, oh, well, God is real because we feel it in our hearts. That doesn't seem like a very verifiable methodology to me. It just kind of feels like
most of my thinking with my brain and not my heart.
Isn't it the strangest thing that she talked to Jesus in the closet? Was she locked in there? Was there enough room for both of them? I have so many
of questions.
Lots
coming out. Clearly, if you don't have the prerequisite knowledge in physics and you're going to use quantum physics to substantiate your claim, right? Do you not see the issue in that, right? Like, you
That's
think
the
this
bigger thing
thing
we should focus on.
proves like the most important question in the world, yet you've like not even picked up a physics book.
If we can completely change a person just by changing the structure of this lump of jelly right here, what could you possibly point to that goes beyond the actual physical thing that we see that does everything you're claiming?
Awesome. Awesome possum. All right, really quick. Hey, listen, below the live chat, you're going to see that we have a fundraiser. 100% of the proceeds for that go directly to the ACA. YouTube doesn't charge any fees. So if you like what we're doing and you feel compelled to help us out, check it out there. You can also support us on Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. It would mean the world to us if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can also become a channel member by clicking the join button below the video. With that, you can get custom chat emotes, and you'll help us out. You'll help out the ACA. Beyond that, we also have our channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in podcast form. You can find that at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. And if you'd like to come hang out with Forrest and I, we'll be on the Fan Run Discord server after the show. We'll do some more announcements here in a few minutes. I'm just making sure we cover all of our bases there. In the meantime, I am eager to get on to this next caller and hear what Forrest has to say. We've got Rex in South Carolina, which of the Carolinas is the southern one. Rex is wondering, is it reasonable to believe that it is possible that we're living in a simulation? Rex, how can we help?
What's going on, Rex?
Yeah. How you guys doing? So I
Never had a bad day, man.
About this the other day. Yeah, right. I got to think about this the other day, talking to a buddy about just the progression of technology. And what I was thinking was just like, hey, at some point in the future, if technology advances exponentially the way it's doing now, you got to think at some point you would approach unlimited computing power, and it's quite possible to not only simulate the Big Bang, but tweak it enough, and in doing so in a simulation, you essentially make the multiverse. You're a god at that point to this simulation, but at the same time, if you could simulate something, and you also find that there was no other option for how everything turned out, you've essentially made a reliable model that predicts your future. And in any case, if your computing power is completely unlimited, you could simulate to the point that, I mean, you just have it just recasts itself over and over again. And you get to the whole problem of hard solipsism. And like, I know that we could never know that. It's unfalsifiable, but at the same time, it seems to be reasonable for me to think that the way things progress and, somehow we make it thousands of years in the future, if you did this thing, then you've kind of broke the whole thing. You create the multiverse. I'm not really sure where it goes from there.
So what specifically are you actually asking? Like, does it make sense to believe this thing because I can't prove that it isn't possible?
Well, no, I guess does it become more reasonable? Do you allow it to become a possibility? Whereas, hard solipsism, technically, yeah, it's possible but it's not at the same time, right? It's like there is no way to falsify it.
I think that I would make a very careful distinction between the word possible and the word probable, likely, reasonable, meaningful, any of those things. Because, lots of things are possible. Like what you just said, you can take it ad absurdum and say, oh, well, if we had a computer that could do this, if we had this kind of tech, if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bike. It would be, you can go as far as you want with it. But at the end of the day, I can say that about absolutely anything. And as you said, it's unfalsifiable. There's no way for me to even prove that it's possible, that this is possible, that this is possible. And if I gave you proof positive that wasn't true, you could say, well, that's part of the simulation too. So it just doesn't matter is really the question for me.
Yeah. And the question that you're asking of, is it reasonable to believe? I think no. And I think I may be able to demonstrate this by just taking the scenario that you're suggesting that there's this infinite computing power creating a simulation that you find yourself in. So just add something silly to that. Is it possible all of that, and that whatever computing power is in charge of that simulation is going to have a pink elephant flat on my ass in 5 minutes? Is it
It's totally
reasonable to
possible.
believe that? Just because, I mean, it's hypothetical. I don't know if it's possible. I don't think it's reasonable to believe that because returning to the first caller with our esteemed colleague we just got off the phone with, I think that for belief to be reasonable, it has to be justified by some evidence. But that's my bias talking.
And I hear that, and that's kind of where I start to break down too. But then it kind of lends itself to that if a thing is trending in a direction, does that become evidence there? Because like the guy was saying before, that if you believe tomorrow is going to be a good day, are you justified in believing it because every day has gotten better up till then? Was, I think, your guys' example. So in kind of that thinking that I believe technology will advance to this point where we essentially simulate the Big Bang and simulate the entire universe, in which case, it's a computer program. So we can go to any timestamp along the timeline and see how things progress and see if it could be any other way. I imagine science would ultimately move towards that goal. I think that would be the biggest piece in the why is everything. So in that, now I have motivation and I have ability, and does that lend more to it's rational to believe that, of course, we're heading that direction, but that we'll ever get there? I guess is where I'm going with.
It very quickly descends into an episode of Black Mirror, and we get into this situation where we're just arguing over the semantics of different words, where it's like, well, is it a belief, or is it a knowledge, or is it an expectation, or is it faith? I think, at the end of the day, like we said a second ago, you can absolutely end that sentence with anything you want. At a certain point, our science will get to a certain point where we can create the Big Bang, and we can tweak it in this way and that way, and we can make the laws of physics be whatever we want them to be. And maybe this is just a different law of physics and the actual law of physics in the actual world that's running the simulation, and therefore nothing we do here really matters. And at a certain point, you have to grapple with the fact that this whole belief system, this whole idea that you have, hinges on the very first word, which is if. And
that's huge.
That's the whole part of it. It's just if, and then anything else, sure. But we're looking for what is actually here, what is real, and what we can prove. And maybe we are in some crazy simulation. We're a brain in a vat being fed, blah, blah, blah. But at the very least, as I think it was Descartes who said, I think, therefore I am. The one thing I can prove for sure is what I can prove for sure around me. I can prove that I exist, and I know what's going on in my reality here. At the very least, I can hinge on that. Everything else is just if.
Yeah. And that's why we would say you don't ever want to put Descartes before the horse.
Nice.
Rex, you reminded me of something. And so, because I understand that science is trending toward, more and more powerful computing all the time. I don't know though if there's a limit to where that computing power can go, if there's an upper limit to it. I don't know if getting to a point where, creating something like this simulation you're talking about is truly possible. And you reminded me of something. This may or may not be relevant, but it could be useful to some of our listeners. So have you ever been in a casino, Rex?
Many times.
Have you ever seen someone at a roulette table seeing that the ball keeps coming up on red? So they're like, okay, so it's going to come up on black next time, or it's going to keep coming up on red. And they'll tell themselves that because of past events that they can predict what's going to happen next.
Yes, I'm aware. I do horrible things like that as well.
I've done it too.
Yeah, no, I know.
I've done it too.
We all
or
do.
seen people at a slot machine and they're like, I can't keep losing forever. The next one's got to hit, right?
It's got to level out, right?
There are so many ways that our intuitions about stuff can just lead us to poor decision making and poor conclusions. So when I'm thinking about when is it reason, and this is why when I think about when is it reasonable to believe something, It has to be about evidence, because I know that my intuitions can make me bet on red when there's no good reason for me to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
So that's where just, you know, I understand where your intuitions are here, and they could be correct. I've placed bets for shitty reasons and had them pay out before, you know, and it's sort of nice when that happens, but at the same time, it's bad because it reinforces the poor decision making. So I would just say that when you're asking, is it reasonable to believe this hypothetical? I would just urge you to stick with, I don't know, until you've got evidence.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't mean like completely tip the scales, but is it, you know, is it useful? Not at all, because they're like, again, it becomes unfalsifiable. But is it, I guess what I was just saying is would it, you know, if you're 100% leaning to not possible, and then you're like, well, this kind of offsets it just a smudge. But no, you brought up some good points. I mean,
Forrest, how do you offset the unfalsifiable though? You know, when you're making
I don't think you do.
what is.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
I don't think you do. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Well,
and again, the utility of it really doesn't lend any credibility to it at all. So it's hard to say. Yeah, it turns out.
Shit. Michael, I hope this has been helpful, and if not helpful, at least useful in some entertainment value type of sense.
And Rex, I hope you don't mind that he just called you Michael.
Oh, I'm looking at the call screen thing. Sorry about that, Rex. That's my bad. I'm getting ahead of myself.
It's totally fine. So, yeah, well, no, I appreciate it, guys. I'll let you move on to other things. And that previous call, I could sense you guys, there was a lot of frustration there.
It got heavy,
really
yo.
I'm sure there was frustration on both sides.
You cut away everything, and the only thing that was left was indoctrination. I mean, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what happened there. He's a person that, you know, I don't want to speak for him, but at this is a key point in his life where he either looks back and says, oh, these are really bad reasons, or he doubles down. And it's just interesting to see a call like that on air where you guys literally just cut away everything, and the only thing was left was I believe because I believe, and there was no reason. So I know it's frustrating. But
maybe he'll think about it and call back in future weeks with a reason. But hey, in the meantime, you have a great rest of your day and a great week, Rex. Sorry for calling you Michael.
You too, guys.
All right.
Take care, man.
Real quick, we want to thank our top 5 patrons, our patrons, our favorite people. I don't know. Maybe. We've got, in no particular order, Eric Tweet, Dingleberry Jackson, Balam's Donkey, Ayame. I don't know how to say that one. I've been saying Ayame, but if you're out there, Ayame, first of all, thank you. And correct me if I'm fucking up your name. Dan Conver, and an honorary mention to J.A. Carlton. Thank you guys for your support. It means the world to us. And with that, I bet nobody can guess the name of our next caller. Michael in California.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Hey, what's up, Michael?
Doing fine.
You wanted to talk about people helping the homeless.
Yeah, I want to push back on that first gentleman that called. I'm a hard atheist, but I belong to 2 organizations one's called Veterans for Peace, and the other one is called.
Did you say hard atheist? Settle down over there. This is a family show.
No, so the first place is one of the things we did was we raised money for sleeping bags. Now, we didn't do it because of religious reasons. We did it because it was needed. And we actually, about 100 sleeping bags here in Venice, and our San Diego chapter did about 400 of them. So, there was a lot of people who walked up on and got sleeping bags. The other one is I belong to an organization called Venice Community Housing. And what we do is we house the unhoused. And we're just about ready to open a new building here in Venice. But that's what we do. We put together buildings that for people who are unhoused, can move into, so we can, so we're working on preventing on houses. And the real thing is that, we're not doing it because we're religious. We're doing it because it's needed. And it's important that people understand this. If you start saying that, well, God is doing this for me to do for somebody else, then you're forgetting one thing, that you need to do things that are real. And what people have to understand is they need to understand that you do it for a reason, and that's to help people out. And if you start playing because I do it because of God, then you're letting something go. You're taking away something from yourself.
Absolutely.
And
It's really important, because like I don't think that I'm going to be punished if I don't do nice things. I don't think I'm going to be rewarded if I do nice things. And yet I still try to use the little bit of time that I have on this planet to make everybody else's little bit of time just a little bit better. That's to say that I'm doing it for somebody else is like, I don't want to fucking help you, but I have to. This guy told me to. And if somebody tells me, well, you're doing it because God can use atheists, you're taking away my humanity and saying, well, he forced you to be a good person. You had no choice but to be a good person. It's, absolutely. Just be a good person because it's the right thing to do. And you shouldn't need any of that to tell you, hey, I'm not the only thinking person in the room. My actions have consequences. Everybody else has an experience that matters. I'm not going to be a dick because I don't want to be a dick. That shouldn't be a controversial religious conversation,
Right.
Michael, as a person who is a person who goes out there and actually does outreach and does charitable work, I just want to ask you, and this is for the benefit of certain listeners that we have, what goes through your head when you hear people say that you can't ground your morality or that you can't be good without a God?
It just flies over my head because I know it isn't true. The thing is, because a person who is personal for themselves and understands there are problems out there and they need to be done and being taken care of, then you go ahead and you do it. But if you're doing it for a reason because I believe in a God and God wants me to do this, that's fine if you want to do that. But the reality is, what are you really doing? Are you really honestly helping that person and setting an example, especially example for yourself? Because, there's so many important reasons out there to do the right thing. And when you start doing it, then you start accomplishing it and you work harder at it. My Venice community housing is a big part of my life. And I really, it's important to me because I live in Venice, and I don't know if you understood about what happened at the boardwalk, but it was amazing. It was the most amazing story I've ever seen. It was like in 2 years, the place was just packed with tents. And the big project was, what are we going to do for these people? And it took them a long time to make decisions and get something done. But you want to know what? Yep. Probably to this day, there's just a small group of people who still camp on the beach, but it's not where, it's not down there on the boardwalk. Because people got together and they did something about it. And it was needed, and the community was forced, was pushing pretty hard to get it done. And so it got done. It got done in the shortest period of time because it was something that people got together, they organized, and they got it done. And it's important that people, they weren't letting anything else get in their way. It was people working for something that is important.
I love that. I love the answer that you've given here. First of all, I want to point out that we can look at that human history and we can see that every time there's been positive change, it has been because of people coming together and making that change happen. It's not like manna from heaven came down to Venice and fed people who were hungry. Okay. It's people organizing to make it happen. And I love what you said about your response to those who would say you can't be good without a God, that you just know that that's not the case. And I think that any thinking person can look and see that that's not the case. I wish that the moral arguments would just die once and for all, because it is so obvious when there are people like you, Michael, out there doing, I almost said doing the Lord's work, doing good work. That the idea that a religious belief, a God belief, a fear of hell, that these things are somehow necessary for people to be good in the here and now, it's just absurd. So thank you, Michael, for calling in and for pushing back on this idea that you can't be good without a God.
And one more thing that I need to mention is when we were doing these things, we didn't do any praying, and we were doing them because they needed to be done, and I think that's important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I had a talk recently where a guy called in to a show I was hosting and was talking about how his house was burned down in a wildfire up in the Pacific Northwest. I think he was in Colorado. It doesn't matter anyway. But there were charitable groups coming out to help, and sort of through luck of the draw, he ended up with people from a ministry who insisted on proselytizing when what he needed was help with going through his home that had burned down. So it's an interesting thing that often the charity work that's done by the faithful is sort of it's contingent upon people being willing to hear some sort of religious pitch. So which is pretty rough. So
well, why do you think your house burned down? Did you be gay in it?
Oh,
maybe we can teach something. It's awful.
Anyway,
Michael, you're awesome.
I'm going to cut you loose, but thank you for what you do. And if you're so inclined, it would be cool if you could pop into the Fan Run Facebook group that we have and let people know how they can also be doing the kind of work that you're doing. I know I hear all the time from atheists and humanists and skeptics who want to do more volunteer work and aren't quite sure where to look. So have a great rest of your day.
I would say I do it for reasons. And I could sit here and talk about reasons all day long, and we can do that with no problem at all. So
absolutely.
Thank you for getting me a call, and have a good day.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, man.
All right.
What a nice guy.
Exactly. And and that's the thing. There's you don't have to believe anything that isn't true to you don't have to have beliefs for the sake of utility to go out and be a good person.
Exactly.
So let me just make sure I'm touching all the bases here with our announcements. Okay, we got. Oh, you know what? I can't believe I would be a fool, as my friend Johnny Angel would say, to not bring up that the next episode of, some would say, the flagship show of the ACA, The Nonprofits, is going to be on live at 3 p.m. Central Time today. Go check them out at tiny.cc/YTNP. And if you want to come hang out with Forrest and I in the Discord, our Fan Run Discord server can be found at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. So with all of that in mind, let's move on. I want to say we would love to be able to get another theist caller or 2 or 4 in before the end of the show. You guys get priority when you call. I have seen that there are some people in the live chat suggesting that maybe Forrest could use some sort of education about how biology really works. Don't lurk in the chat.
I'm into it. The last almost 10 years of my life have been seeking education in biology. So I would love to hear if you have something new. Let's do it.
Right. It's your whole thing is getting educated about biology. So
it's literally my job.
So while we're waiting for those brave theists and biology scholars to call, we're going to talk to Ruth, who wants to talk about the claim that religious people heal quicker because they have God and faith. Ruth, what's going on?
Yeah. What's up, Ruth?
Oh, hi. It's just me.
Hey.
I also have a funny story at the end. Oh, and hi to your partner there. I was playing Candy Crush because I'm in a cast, and that's why the first caller. The first caller made me so mad.
It was insane.
Healing stuff.
I had a hard time keeping a smile on my face for that one.
He put me through so many emotions. He put me through anger at first, and then I started laughing, and I don't know if it's the Percocet or what, but yeah.
Hey, we're glad you enjoyed the call. But so this claim, this idea that religious people heal, and for those in the audience who aren't familiar, Ruth is a repeat caller who is not a religious person. So I've got religious people heal quicker because they have God and faith is in quotes. So did someone suggest this to you recently, Ruth?
Well, your first caller was saying that his his faith heals him quicker, and I think my atheist body heals just as fast as whatever he believes in, and I'll attest to that. So another is they always go off on science. It just cracks me up.
Well, and today I've been hoping that we would get some people wanting to call and really dig in and talk about science because Forrest is here. I was hoping, maybe a creationist or somebody would call in.
It'd be fun.
But maybe I don't know. I don't know where
yeah. Oh yeah, where's that debate? Because I know people like Brian Greene and some of the other scientists. They won't even, debate the subject with a Christian because it's like debating a flat Earth person.
It gets so dishonest so fast.
J Mike's been debating flat Earth people quite a bit lately, from what I understand. I got to find those videos. Forrest, what's your take on the guys and gals out there in the world of science who will say we don't even want to talk to the flat Earth people?
It's hard because
the creationist people. Like I remember Richard Dawkins years ago was saying that he wouldn't even talk to dignify them with a debate.
Yeah, it's really tough because I'm an educator first. That's my whole life is I want so badly to share what I know, because the only thing better than learning science is teaching it. And so whenever you're thinking about education, whenever you're talking about doing a debate, a lecture, a class, talking online, you always need to ask, number one, who am I really talking to? And, what is the actual intended outcome of this conversation? With somebody who's calling in, like the first caller there, the second he said evidence is not necessary and it's cowardice to only want evidence, things like that, the conversation is over for me. I know that there's nothing that I can say is going to change this person's mind. It's like I always, if someone tells you can't change my mind, you need to believe them and not try. But there's a bunch of other people who are listening. That's who I am now talking to. I'm not going to bring this person in, but I'm not going to be able to push them any further away. So if I, chastise them and call them out for what they're doing, rather than trying to have a polite conversation, they're not going to like me any more than they already did. But the other people listening might see how ridiculous this person is. And so that is usually my take on that kind of thing. That's why I do on my YouTube channel, I have a series called Reacteria, where I watch mainly creationist videos. And I'm like, okay, here's why what they're saying makes no sense. Here's why their argument is ridiculous. Here's what biology actually is. And I try to make it educational. I know those people aren't going to change their minds, but the people watching might. And I've had a million comments that say hey, I've never heard it described this way. I think I actually understand it now. And so when someone says I'm not going to debate anybody, I'm not going to validate what they're saying, I'm not going to give credence to their ideas, I get that to a certain point, because there are people that are so dishonest, they're going to misinterpret what you said. They're going to use you as a tool to try to bring their flock closer. But if you can at least guarantee that the whole conversation will be published, I think that there's always value in at least having the conversation for somebody else to benefit from, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I was in that position. Because I was raised as to be a young Earth creationist, and was, I've talked about this at length before, an evangelical, believed all that stuff, and listening to debates was huge, because I came out of an atmosphere where, this is something that I think atheists and skeptics should pay attention to. If you're in the position that I was in, of spending 25 years just getting hammered with just young Earth creationist stuff, this is what's true over and over and over and over again, and there is no pushback from within. Seeing people just openly be like, no, that's wrong, and here's why, can be a very powerful thing, because you don't see that from the inside. Things are just accepted as true. So yeah, I think that it's extremely valuable to push back.
Well, I pushed back. I think I told you, Kenneth, when I was a child about, what was it? Incest in the ark. Because Noah had those, I mean, it's just ludicrous. And that's when they kicked me out of church. So they don't like it when you push back or challenge facts. Now, the first caller, I think you lost him when he said facts are subjective.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
They're not subjective. As a scientist, you would know. I mean, it sounded like a Republican.
Well, who knows? But I mean, the underlying issue is one of Well, and that's that points to the larger issue of failures of critical thinking, it's a fascinating thing when you start to really dig into all the ways that we can be wrong. And I mean, as a scientist, Forrest, I mean, everything is about correcting for all the ways that we can be wrong, right?
Yeah. I'm stoked to death when I find out I'm wrong, because that means that I'm a better scientist and a better educator now than I was a minute ago. And like that is the point of science as well, is that you are trying to prove yourself wrong. There's that's something that you always want to teach at an early level, is that we don't prove a hypothesis. We fail to reject it. We are constantly trying to prove ourselves wrong. My research right now is just seeing if something is possible that might tell us something about something else, that might tell us something about human evolution. Like it's not just I did this and I learned a thing. It's this, I am trying like hell to show that this doesn't work. And when I can no longer do that, we're going to use it.
Yeah.
Right. And I also believe that they fear death. I have to say, they're so afraid they're going to hell. They don't do anything for everything.
That was something he brought up right at the beginning, was that he's not afraid of death anymore because of this idea. And it's like, okay, so the way you stop fearing death was by thinking that it doesn't happen. I don't believe it's real anymore. My mind will go somewhere else and my body doesn't matter. And like, by just rejecting that something exists, that's not a way to get rid of the fear of it in this way. And it is in certain things, but not with a physical reality like that. You're treating death like this boogeyman, some monster under the bed. It's very strange.
Yeah, I can't imagine living in fear, and that's kind of what it is deep down in their little psyche. Because I was never brought up in the church, but I can imagine as a child learning something, even in school, and and they're telling you it's right. 1 + 1 is 2, but it's a fact, not a subjective fact.
Well, and it's not true because a book says so. It's
Right.
There was a meme that was going around I saw this week. I think Seth Andrews had shared it, and I think you might have shared it for us, where there was this idea of like what people think the creation versus evolution debate is. And it's like, it's like the Christian holding up a Bible, like I've got a book, and a scientist holding up like a science textbook. It's like, I've got a book. That's not how it works. And the thing is, for people who are on the I have a book side of things, they're operating from within the world of where it's normal to just believe bullshit because a book says so. And to do that thing, Forrest drew attention to this, of starting from your conclusion and then trying to work your way backwards and justify that conclusion, which is a good way to be wrong. I mean, we have names for this, of confirmation bias, motivated reasoning. I mean, this is a problem when you do that. So it's one of the reasons
why like your Sherlock Holmes.
No, because I bet he still thinks of Sherlock as a hero, not a coke addicted deductive bitch. But like the whole the whole thing about like when you thinking this way, when you come up from this dogmatic perspective, that's why we have such a problem whenever I'm talking about with creationists about they say, well, Darwin didn't believe, and Darwin said this, and Darwin changed his mind at the end, and Darwin actually got this wrong. It's like, okay, cool. Even if I grant you everything, none of that matters because I don't worship Darwin. Like that we don't come from that argument of authority. There's a lot of shit On the Origin of Species that isn't quite right. Darwin got some stuff wrong. He did. And there are also all sorts of other scientists for the past 200 years since Darwin that have gotten some things right and gotten some things wrong. The point is that we're on a trend of getting more and more and more right as we go along. And like that's how it gets better. If we just say, well, Darwin said it, and therefore we're never going to get anywhere past Darwin. And that's the problem, is you're reading this Bronze Age diet manual and you're never going to get past that because it says it here and that's all it'll ever say, rather than where else can we go from here, you know?
Well, their big comeback, which is laughable, and I would never just put down a Christian to their faith. I want to hear them out, and I do. My problem is I like to debate them a lot. Is that why are there still monkeys? And
why are there monkeys is still good. Forrest, what's the short answer for why are there still monkeys?
Because we didn't evolve from those monkeys.
Those particular monkeys.
Yeah.
Right.
People tend to see, like, there is this, that's one of the coolest things, is that when we first discovered fossils and really understood what fossils were, back in like the 1700s, there were these things called tongue stones. They were actually fossilized shark teeth. And they would find, these bones of these extinct animals. And when they finally started realizing, holy fuck, these are actually animal bones, and I can't find these animals anywhere. The idea of extinction was first introduced around this time, around this early 1700s, if I remember correctly. And it was a very, very controversial idea that things go extinct. Like, that was mind-boggling, because we still had this concept that everything was created exactly as it is just a few thousand years ago and hasn't changed since. And we still were operating on this concept, this model called the Great Chain of Being, where all matter and all life were arranged in this hierarchy with God at the top and humans right underneath, and then everything else going down. And so when we came up with the idea that extinction was a possibility, it completely shook our concept of biology and physics to its core. And when you have people who talk about why are there still monkeys, they're operating from that same chain of being, that monkeys are less evolved than humans, that every monkey is just waiting for the chance to be a human. Fish haven't become humans yet. And humans are the peak, the pinnacle. It's this very teleological, or what we would call orthogenetic in biology way of thinking, where there's this hierarchy of existence. And it just doesn't work that way. Real biology doesn't work that way. Nothing is more evolved than anything else that's currently alive. Everything that's currently living is the peak of evolution. Humans evolve for our niche the same way that chimpanzees evolve for their niche. And if we were switched, our niches would be switched, and our appearance and blah, blah, blah. And if the conditions were different, we would have evolved differently, or we wouldn't have evolved at all. So you'll see that a lot. Like when people say the super evolved cat, and it's a cat walking on two legs with human characteristics. No, it doesn't get more human as it gets more evolved. That isn't how anything works.
What about our eyes, though, bro? What about eyes?
Yeah, our eyes aren't that special. They're not the best eyes in the animal kingdom. Go check out a cephalopod's eyes, and right back, go look up a fucking mantis shrimp, yo. We have 3 cone cells, so we can perceive the whole rainbow. Mantis shrimp have 16 cone cells. Imagine a color you can't even imagine. Then do that 50 more times, and that's what a mantis shrimp can fucking see. It's amazing. And so we don't have the most complex eyes. And what's really cool is that we can actually, not only can we track how eyes evolve just by simple gradation, each one being useful to its possessor, each one being a little being functional, but you can also see all these different kinds of eyes that we predict out in the animal kingdom today. We see the little patch of photosensitive cells. We see cup eyes. We see pinhole camera eyes. We see simple lenses. We see complex lenses. We see every kind of eye under the sun, including eyes, again, that are better than ours. So these ideas, it's just as dishonest as when people say, going back to the thing that Darwin said, that I freely admit that, to say that eyes evolved is absurd. Yeah, he did. And if you read the next sentence, he then explains how it happened.
Next part.
So,
and you know what's funny?
I wear eyeglasses, so my eyes are shit.
How fucking perfect. Yes.
Well,
how perfect and beautifully designed are your eyes that you need glasses.
Nobody
I know.
would be more psyched to see how wrong Darwin was than Darwin if Darwin had the chance. As a serious scientist, as a person who wanted to understand the world, and the key thing underneath all this is it is about methodology. It's about how we arrive at conclusions. Darwin would be stoked to see the progress that's been made, because that's what science is, and that's kind of the difference between the scientific and the religious.
Yeah, being wrong is a wonderful thing because you learn more stuff.
Question. The scientist question. Religious don't.
Ruth, speaking of the religious, I'm going to issue right now, last call for the theists. We've had several popping in and out of the live chat today.
Yes,
telling
I
us
was
things.
looking over here, seeing it. Yeah.
So listen, if you believe that, God loves us, call and tell us why. We'll have questions, but we can talk about it. That's what we do here. I
personally think that saying God loves you or Jesus loves you is a really cruel and horrible thing to say to somebody. Come argue with me about it. I think it's an awful thing to say.
There you
and
go.
Plus, all the people in the chat talking about biology, I've seen several people. I study biology and I teach it for a living. Please, let's go, man.
Yeah,
I promise I'll be nice.
We'll give it a couple minutes here, because apparently the theists are, there's this sort of shrinkage that has happened with the confidence of the theists of
that
late.
happens in nature.
So
it's cold outside.
Yeah. So Ruth, what is your final parting thought for us this week?
Oh, hello?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, you're here.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
That's her to beat. My final thought is.
Oh, sorry.
Is that we as an atheist group, a unity, part of the population, are as generous and as kind and thoughtful and loving as, and probably more. We're not as judgmental. At least I don't think. I don't judge people unless they've done a crime, and I'd have to see it. That's evidence. So I just want people to know that we're as loving as any Christian. And by the way, Buddha has been around longer than Christianity.
Yeah, that was that guy was talking about how, oh, this is such an old book. That means, flip, dude. Like, come on. It takes 1 second to think about why that's not reasonable.
Yeah.
I know he made me laugh. He made me laugh when he said that. He also said that they're not believers. And I guess they're all going to hell. That means about 80% of this world's going to hell.
Yep.
Well,
I don't. My husband said before he died, he said he'll be waiting for me in hell with a 6-pack of beer.
That sounds like a date.
There you go. All right, Ruth.
I can't wait.
Ruth, have a great rest of your day.
I was so excited to talk to someone in science.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
study science.
This is a great opportunity. Then, Forrest, where can people find you? Let's talk about that. Ruth, I'm gonna cut you loose. Have a great rest of your day. Take it easy with being in a cast and all that stuff.
Ruth, you've been charming. Thank you so much.
With the Candy Crush.
Ruth is incredibly nice. Yeah, if you want to find me, you can look me up online on them interwebs. ValkaiLabs.com is my website. You can find my YouTube, my TikTok, my Instagram. Sometimes I remember that I have a Twitter too. That's interesting. But all that's linked there on that website for your convenience. Honestly, I always encourage people to go check me out on YouTube and TikTok, though. Those are my biggest followings, my biggest platforms by far. And I'm always trying to put out more interesting educational stuff. I just released a video yesterday or the day before about menstruation and how it works and why it's important that we educate more people about menstruation. So go check that out. You'll get to watch me get electrocuted.
Yeah. That was good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of what Forrest does. I especially spend just an unconscionable amount of time on TikTok as a responsible adult.
As we all do.
Yeah. Well, hey, because the theists apparently, I don't know. Do you guys think that your job is done? I mean, is it? I mean, I don't know. I saw one guy in the chat saying pay me to call with a Jesus username, and I don't remember the part where the Great Commission says, go and make disciples of all nations if they pay you, or, be ready to give an answer for the faith that is in you if they pay you. I must have missed that part of the book in my studies.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. I seem to remember Jesus having this whole thing about money in the church and how that's not a good deal. And I don't know. Something about hypocrites, wasn't it? Yeah. Very weird.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe next time, folks. All right. Well, hey, Forrest, it's been a pleasure. I just want to reiterate here: there are ways that you can support the channel. You can donate to our fundraiser. You can like and subscribe to the video. You can become a member. Find us on Patreon. Find us on the podcast page, the tiny.cc/AEN podcast. Come hang out with us in the Discord. Maybe I'll tell you what. Anybody who didn't call in, people who are making claims about not being able to call in, you can find us on the Discord, and we will be happy to talk to you. Stick around for the next episode of the Nonprofits, by the way, at 3. Can we get a look at our crew, our favorite people on the planet?
Look at them.
Even look at these people. These are the people who make the show happen. Thank you,
That
crew, for all that you do. Yeah, I like that one. I like it. We're just saying that and not specify. But you know who you are, favorite crew person. Let's get some love rings going, because it is that time. It is that part of the show where we want to thank our viewers. Thank you for making this show happen. We wouldn't have a show without our viewers, without our callers. Thank you. Even the callers that frustrate us. Thank you for calling in, because without you, there'd be no show. You guys are what make it happen. Right? Especially people who are like, I just got out of church and I'm calling in. That is awesome. That's awesome. We want to engage with those people. Whether or not you believe, if you are an essential worker, thank you so much for all that you continue to do. The world is still weird and crazy, and being an essential worker hasn't gotten any easier, but you keep showing up. Thank you for everything that you do. If you don't believe, this is your community. We want you to be plugged in. I'm always harping about getting on the Facebook group and finding us and being actually part of the community so we can all hang out. So if you're out there, if you're on the fence, if you're thinking, they don't want to talk to me. Yeah, we do. We totally do. Come find us. We'll hang. And if you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
Take care.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.